Hello everybody, and welcome to another tutorial. In the previous one, we showed how to find your Garry's Mod installation folder, how to make a new Lua file, and how to run it in the game. In this one, we're going to do something similar, except we're going to make a weapon that you can use in the game. It's just about the same as making a Lua file, it's just you have to put a lot more inside of it, but we'll go over that. So, there are two things you can do with there are two places you can make it. You could make it directly in your Lua weapons folder, which will automatically put it into the game, but I'm going to show you how to make it an add-on instead. I think it makes it easier to organize it, and it makes it easier once you're ready to upload it to the workshop if that's what you want to do. So, let's get to work. Go to your add-ons folder, right-click, make a new folder. Give this folder a unique name. I find a good thing to do is to put your Steam name or just whatever name you want in front of it, just because it makes it unique and it doesn't have a chance of it conflicting with other add-ons that have the same name. So I'm going to put Asper underscore new weapon. I wouldn't use capital letters and spaces. I really wouldn't do that. It's a lot easier if you just keep it underscored and yeah. So, inside of your folder, we're going to make another folder, and we're going to call it Lua. And inside of that folder, we're going to make another folder, and we're going to call it Weapons. Now, if you noticed, we're doing the same thing that Garry's Mod does. Garry's Mod has a Lua folder, and Garry's Mod has a Weapons folder. We're basically copying that so that the game knows that you are making a weapon, and it needs to put it into the game. So, go back inside of your Weapons folder, and make a new Lua file. If you remember from the previous video, you just have to make a text file and change the file extension to Lua. Again, give it a unique name. I'm going to call it Asper underscore new weapon. And I'm going to change the extension to Lua. Yes. And now we're going to go inside of it. So, inside of here, the very first thing you want to do, and this is going to cover any weapon that you make, is you're going to want to put add cs Lua file with two parentheses after it. What this does is it makes it where any person who joins the server or joins the game is going to download this to their client, which this is necessary to make the weapon work properly. So, what we're going to do next is we are going to consult the wiki. And the wiki, if you type in SWEP or weapon and go down to structs SWEP, this is going to show you all of the variables, hooks, and functions you can give to your weapon. We're going to be using a lot of these. We're going to be referring to this a lot throughout the video and throughout all the tutorial. So, the very first thing we want to do is give the weapon a name. Now, you can assign variables to your weapon by typing in all caps, SWEP, dot, and then whatever you want. So the first thing is the class name. Well, you don't need to set that. You don't need to set that because you already gave it a class name. The name of your file is the class name, so it's called Asper underscore new weapon. So we don't need to touch that. If we scroll down a bit, we're going to find spawnable. Do you want this to be spawnable in the spawn menu? By default, this is set to no, so we're going to want to set it to yes. So we're going to do swep.spawnable equals true. Now this is a Boolean function, meaning it only accepts two values, true or false. So we want to set it to true. If you try to put a number or anything else in there, it's going to throw out an error. And if you want to know what kind of variable to put inside of it, it'll tell you right here, string, 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 Boolean, Boolean, string, string, number, entity, etc., etc. So, spawnable, yes. Well, now we have to give it a name. Even though you gave it a class name, it needs an in-game name. So, swep.printName equals, and call it whatever you want. It's got to be a string, so anything that's a string has to be put in quotation marks. See how it turns yellow? That's how you know it's a string when you're in the syntax, the Gmod Lewis syntax. So, I'm going to call this, Asper's new weapon. You can put spaces and uppercases in here because this is just a display name. It's not the file name. So I'm going to call Asper's new weapon. Now the next thing we're going to do is go to category. What this does is if you look in your spawn menu in like the weapons tab, you have categories like Half-Life 2, Other, Counter-Strike, etc. This basically makes a new category. So if you don't do this, your weapon is going to appear in the other category. So you don't have to do this necessarily, but I like to organize everything. So SWEP.category equals, and give it another string. I'm going to call it Asper's weapons. And again, you want to give it a unique name. So, we gave it a category, we gave it a name, we made it spawnable. The next thing we want to do is give it a base. A weapon base, as you're probably familiar with if you browse the workshop, is something like Arctic's base, or M9K, or FAS2, which is basically, a weapon base is basically a blank weapon that has all the functions inside of it, but it doesn't call them. It's basically it basically constructs a weapon, and all you have to do is call upon those functions whenever you actually want to make something. Well, we don't really want to do that right now. Let's keep it simple. So we're going to keep the base as swep.base equals weapon underscore base. This is the basic weapon. Like this is like what the Half-Life weapons use. It's very basic. It's nothing. There's no bells and whistles to it. It's basically a blank canvas for you. So, the next thing we want to do is, again, you don't have to do this, but I think it's a good idea so that people know who made it. We're going to do swep.author equals, and again, put a string as it wants you to do in the wiki, Asper, or put your name, not mine. And then swep.instructions. If you have any instructions like how to use your weapon, is it instructions? Yeah, instructions. If you want to have any directions on how to use your weapon, you can put the string in here. So I'm just going to say, this is going to be a weapon that shoots. That's all it's going to do. So I'm going to say left click. Sorry about that. Anyway, instructions. Left click. I'm just going to say shoot. Simple as that. The next thing we're going to do is let's check the wiki. Contact. Do you want any information on how to contact you about the weapon? Purpose. What's the purpose of this SWEP? You don't really have to put those in. I think the author name and the instructions are enough. So, the next thing we want to do is set the view model. Basically, what is the weapon going to look like? Well, you could have something custom, but that's going to require people to download stuff. So, I recommend, let's just stick with something simple. If you want to find out how to get the models, just look up weapon model in the wiki, and at the bottom it'll say common weapon models. These are all the things that are included with Garry's mod. The Half-Life 2 weapons, some of the Garry's mod weapons, and if you have Counter-Strike Source mounted, the Counter-Strike Source weapons. So, let's go with the SMG. As you can see, this is the view model path, the world model path, and the weapon's display name. The view model is what we want. The view model is what you see on the screen. It's the first-person perspective of the weapon. The world model is the third-person perspective. It's what everybody else sees when you have the weapon out. Well, we don't want that right now. We're going to set the view model, so take this and copy it, model/weapon/c smg1.mdl, copy it, and then go to swep.viewModel equals, make it a string, and copy that in. Whoops, I did not mean to open that up. I don't know how to close it. Well, that's okay. It can sit there for all it needs to do. Anyway, we got the view model, so let's go back to our SWEP structures. Let's go back to our SWEP structures. So we got the view model. Now we're going to get the world model, because we set what it looks like in first person. Now we need to set what it looks like in third person. So swep.worldModel equals, and let's go back to weapon model. And let's grab the world model for the SMG. Right here. Copy that. Make it a string. Paste. So now we have what it looks like for you and for everybody else who's looking at you. Let's go back to our SWEP structures. So we've got the base, we've got the author, we've got the view model, we've got the world model. If you want to flip the view model, make it left-handed or right-handed, depending on what it is by default, you can do that. If you want to set the FOV, meaning how much of it do you see, how far away your arms are from the screen, you can set that, but we're going to leave this alone for now. We don't need to. If you want to make it to where your weapon automatically switches when you run out of ammo, or when you pick it up it automatically switches, you can change these. By default they're true, so when you pick it up, the weight is basically how important the weapon is when you pick it up. Like if you have something like a shotgun, which the game thinks, oh, that's a stronger weapon, and you pick this up, and by default it'll be like, well, that's not really stronger than the shotgun, so I'm not going to switch to it. Again, I could just go on and on about all of these functions, but again, what you should do is take a look at them and see if you want to play with them. So, let's scroll down a bit because we have some more functions we can set. We've got the slot, meaning what slot do you want your weapon to be in? Like slot 0 is where your physics gun is. Slot 1 is where your weapon, your crowbar is. Slot 2 is the pistol. Slot 3 is the submachine gun, etc. Well, why don't we put it where the SMG is, just to keep it as close as we can. So SWEP.slot equals, sorry, it's not supposed to be a string, it's supposed to be a number. It says here, number 3. Now it'll be where your SMG is. Weapon slot position. How high do you want to be when you're in your weapon slot? Do you want to be at the top or the bottom? Let's put it at the top. Slot pause, as it says here, equals 0. Now, by the way, I want to stress how important it is that if it is capitalized, the letters are capitalized in the wiki, you have to capitalize them too. If they're not capitalized, you have to keep them undercase too. Otherwise, the game is not going to recognize them as a function or a known variable. It's going to think that you're making something entirely new, and it's going to throw out an error. So do be careful of how you proceed with this. Like if you have any errors with it, check back at your handiwork and see if you accidentally capitalize this. See how when I make the S capitalized, it's not blue anymore? It's like, okay, well, what is this? Oh, I guess it's a new variable. It's nothing I know. So make sure that you match everything exactly as it is. So let's keep going down. SWEP.primary. This is going to be all the settings that your primary attack has. So your ammo, what kind of ammo are you using? The clip size, how big is your magazine? Default clip, how much ammo do you get when you pick it up? Automatic, do you want to be an automatic weapon? Or do you want to be like the pistol where you have to click every time? So, to do that, we have to do SWEP.primary dot and then what we want to set. So, ammo. Let's set the ammo. Now to get the ammo type, let's go to the wiki and let's look up ammo type. Default ammo types at the bottom. Let's make it use SMG ammo just to keep it simple. So you want to go and get the name SMG1, copy it, make it a string, and paste. So now you have the ammo type. Let's go back to the wiki. The clip size. How big do you want the magazine to be? If you set this to -1, it'll make it to where the weapon has no magazine, like the rocket launcher or the grenades, where you just have your ammo pool and you keep throwing them. Well, we want it to be able to reload and stuff, so let's give it a magazine. Let's do clip size. Let's give it 30. I think 30 is a pretty good number. And then how much ammo do we want to pick up? SWEP.default clip. Let's also set it to 30, so you get 1 magazine of ammo every time you pick up the weapon. And then automatic. SWEP.automatic. Let's make it true. It is a machine gun after all, so we want it to be fully auto. Okay. Now, If you want to set secondary, like the MP the SMG's grenade launcher, instead of typing instead of typing swep.primary, we type swep.secondary. But let's keep it just simple for now. We just want a primary machine gun. Next, use hands. Do you want your hands? Do you want to show your player model's hands, or do you want to show Gordon's hands if it's a weapon that supports them? Well, I want to see my own hands, so we're going to do use hands equals true. And then I believe that's everything we need when it comes to your primary, your settings. So, now that this is all done, we're going to make functions for the weapon. A function is basically a task. It's basically do something. And the way the weapons work is if we look up SWEP, weapon, these are all the functions that weapons can do. All the functions right here, like SWEP dot, where is it? Oh, I'm sorry, sorry about that again. Anyway, now we're going to move on to functions, which again are tasks that the weapon is going to perform. You can find all the functions that the weapon is going to perform by going to the wiki, looking up weapon, and then scrolling down, all the way down until you see a category called hooks. A hook is basically an event. Like, it's an event that's going to call upon your function. For example, every time the player moves, that's a hook. Every time you type a message in the chat, that's a hook. And every time the weapon fires, or every time the weapon reloads, you pick it up, etc., that's a hook. So you take a hook, and these hooks, they pair them with functions, and you say, when I pick up the weapon, I want this to happen. When I shoot the weapon, I want this to happen. So, well, the first thing we're going to want to do for the weapon is we're going to want to initialize it. Initializing is basically when you spawn the weapon, this is going to set all of the rules about it, basically. So every time the weapon is spawned, it's going to pick up all the rules. So we're going to do, so we're done here. We're going to start using colons now because we're making functions. We use dots here because we are setting the settings for it, but now we're using the colon. So make sure not to put dots or it's going to get confused. So SWEP colon, I'm sorry, entirely. We have to declare it as a function. Lua needs to know what a function is. So we do function SWEP colon initialize 2 parentheses, and then go underneath it and type end. The reason why we're doing this is everything inside of here. So always put an end after you make a function. It's a good idea that every time you declare a new function to put the end underneath it, just so you don't accidentally leave it open and then get an error. Anything inside the parentheses, mind you, is going to be an argument if the function requires it. In this case, initialize does not need an argument, so we can leave it blank. So, what do we want to happen when the weapon is initialized? There's one function we want from the start, and that's going to be the hold type. The hold type is how does your third-person model hold the weapon? Do they hold it like a shotgun, an SMG, a pistol? We want them to hold it as an SMG, so we're going to do self, which, by the way, whenever you're inside of a SWEP function, if you need to refer to the weapon, you do self, which means, okay, I know that I'm inside of the weapon's function, and self means I'm referring to me. I'm referring to myself, the weapon. So, self, set, hold, type, and now we're going to go to the wiki again, and we're going to find the right hold type. So, go to set hold type, and then see how it says you can find all the default hold types here. Click on that. And this is all the ways that your third-person camera player holds the weapon. Well, we wanted to hold it like the SMG, so here's the name, SMG. Let's copy that. Oops, make it a string, SMG. So now your third-person model is going to hold the SMG like an SMG. So, I believe that's all we need for initialize. Let me just check one of my weapons real quick and make sure I am not missing anything. Initialize. Nope, that's all we need for now. We don't need anything all that fancy junk. So, what's the next thing you want? Well, how about when the weapon fires? The primary attack, like what happens when you click the weapon? So, let's go back to the wiki, go back to our weapon hooks down here, and we're going to look for something called primary attack. Right here. This is basically what happens, see, what happens when you press the attack button with your weapon. So, what we're going to do is we're going to make a function, again, function SWEP primary attack, 2 parentheses, end, to close the function out. Now, what do we want to happen? What do we want to happen whenever we shoot the weapon? You have to declare everything. So, how about we start by making the bullet? The bullet is its own thing. We're going to declare the bullet and we're going to make it do all sorts of damage. We're going to make it do regular damage. We're going to say how fast the bullet shoots. We're going to do all this stuff and we're going to make it simple. So, what we're going to do is we're going to define a bullet. The bullet being, of course, the quote projectile. It's not an actual projectile because Garry's mod uses hit scan, meaning it draws a line from you to whatever you're pointing at and tells you what's in front of you and if it's going to take damage. We're going to define a bullet. The way Lua works when you define things like this is it makes a table. You can make a table in Lua by making 2 curly brackets. Make sure it's not these, though. These will not work. It has to be a curly bracket. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a local variable. And we're going to say local. Local variables mean they only exist inside of this class or the function. So if I make a variable in here and I just call it variable, it's only going to be recognized in here. So if I try to call variable outside of this function, it's going to give me an error like, oh, it doesn't exist. It's nil. So local variable equals 2 curly brackets. We're making something called a table. A table in Lua is basically a collection where it has 2 things. A key, which tells you where it is, and a value, which basically is the data that you're putting in the table. So we're going to make local, I wouldn't call it variable. Let's just call it bullet. Local bullet equals 2 curly brackets. So let's go to the bullet and let's give it some bullet info. As we want to do is, so go type in bullet and find structs like we did for weapon, except it's for the bullet. So what do we want to do here? Well, how about the damage? Let's start with the damage. How much damage do you want your bullet to do? In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to do bullet dot damage. Make sure it doesn't have to be uppercase. No, it's uppercase. Damage equals, and then set a number. How about we set it to 15 for now? That seems fair for the SMG. So now we set the damage. The next thing we're going to set is going to be distance, hole size, number. The number. How many bullets do you want to fire? Is it an SMG and it fires 1 bullet, or is it a shotgun and it fires multiple at a time? Let's just do 1 for now. So bullet.num equals 1. Okay, what else? A tracer. A tracer is basically like when you see the bullet coming out, like that little yellow line in Half-Life 2. How often do you want to see that? Do you want every single bullet to leave a tracer, or do you want to only be every so many bullets? Let's just make every bullet have a tracer. So bullet.tracer equals 1. Well, now we need to declare the tracer name. We need to say what kind of tracers it has. Is it the SMG tracer or is it the AR2's fancy blue tracer? So bullet.tracer name equals, we go back to the wiki, you can find a list of default effects here. And look at all these effects. Well, don't be intimidated. We're going to look for the effects called tracer. Here they are. And let's just find a very basic tracer. We're going to do the one that's just called tracer at the bottom. Simple. So bullet.tracer name equals tracer. Make sure it's a string because see, it's looking for a string. Okay. The direction of the bullet. Where is the bullet going? Let's see. Where's the bullet going? We're going to do bullet.dir because that's what it's called in the wiki, I believe, right? Yeah, dir. And we're going to do, where is it? All right. We're going to do self, meaning, the weapon, get, or self get owner, 2 parentheses, because it's a function. Get owner basically returns the owner of the weapon, which is you. And then we are going to do, get aim vector, 2 parentheses. Get aim vector is basically the direction that you are facing. We want the bullet to go exactly where you are looking. Well, now, where is the bullet coming from? We don't know. We need to set that. So bullet.src, which stands for source, where is the bullet coming from? We're going to say equals self get owner. Again, it's coming from you. And we're going to do get shoot pause. Get shoot pause is basically right out of your eyes, if that makes sense. I know you would think, wait, why isn't it coming out of the gun? There's a reason for that. The gun is, if it came out of the gun directly, it wouldn't be where you were facing. Think about, the bullets are coming out of your eyes. The tracer is going to come out of the gun. So the tracer that comes out of the weapon isn't real. It's just sort of an illusion to make it look like it came out of the gun. I know that sounds really weird, but that's just how Garry's Mod and Half-Life work. So, we've got the damage, we've got the source, the direction, the tracer. How about the spread? Do you want your gun to be extremely precise? Or do you want to have a little bit of deviation, some spread? Let's do bullet.spread equals, and we're going to use where is it? Where is the spread? Let's see. I'm sorry. We're going to give it a vector. A vector is basically a unit to calculate position or direction. We're going to do bullet.spread equals vector, and we're going to set it to a very small vector. Yeah, because if you set it to like vector 111, it would be very inaccurate. So how about we set it to 0.01 for x, 0.01 for y, and I don't think we have to set it for z. I think we only have to set 2 values. So for z, we'll leave that alone. Now the reason why we put 2 values is if you type in vector and just, vector, vectors want 3 values for x, y, and z. By default, it's 0, 0, 0, but you can put 3 values. So x, I believe, is left and right. Y is up and down, or yeah, Y is up and down. Z is forward and backwards. So we don't really need your bullet coming from a different forward and backwards from your position. We just need an up, down, left, and right. And what this will do is it'll randomize it. By default, it randomizes the vector. So it can be anywhere between 0.01 or 0.001. It'll either be accurate or inaccurate. So it'll make a natural spread of bullets. So now that we have all of our bullet functions, let me just check to make sure that everything is set. We have our number, source, direction, spring, tracer. The force, excuse me. How hard do you want your bullet to hit? Like if you shoot a prop with it, do you want to send the prop flying? Or do you want to set it, you want to just like push it a little bit? Let's set the force to, I don't know. Bullet.force equals, let's do 5. I think 5 is a good number. It is an SMG. It's not a really powerful machine gun. If you want to really have some fun with it, set it to 500 and see what happens. I wouldn't recommend doing this indoors because you'll probably kill yourself with the prop bouncing back and smacking you in the face or sending the NPC's body like whoosh. Anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, so we have everything we need. Now it's time to fire the bullet when you left click. So we're going to do self fire bullets parenthesis bullet, which you're basically doing if we go to fire bullets in the wiki. We're basically telling it to fire a bullet, and then we are giving it a table of instructions of how to shape and control the bullet. There's another function called self shoot bullets. Shoot bullet. But when you do that, you have to put a bunch of variables in there. It's basically the same as doing this, but I think this is a little bit neater. So, now, when you press the primary button on your weapon, it's going to fire the bullet. But now there's a couple of so that's all it's going to do. It's not going to make any noise. It's not going to show any feedback. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to make the bullet. Well, that's not very cool. So what we're going to have to do is go back to our SWEP functions. Sorry, weapon functions. And we are going to, first thing we're going to do is we are going to set the animation of it. We're going to set the animation of the weapon to make it, shoot. So, the first thing we are going to do is we're going to do self send weapon anim. And the weapon animation is going to be called act_VM_primary attack. This is basically what the weapon is programmed to look like when you shoot it. It's going to show like the weapon, recoiling in your hands. But that's only for the view model. So now what we have to do is we have to set what you look like what your third person looks like. So we're going to do self, get owner, set animation, and the animation is going to be called player_attack1. Basically, again, what the weapon is programmed, it's not what the weapon is programmed, it's what the third person hold type is programmed to look like when your character fires it. So your character is going to look like he's shooting the SMG, it's going to recoil in your arms as it should be. Great. Well, we're missing something. How about the sound? Now this part is where it can get a little complicated. We are going to use a function called emit sound, which is an entity function. And it's got all sorts of fancy sounds and stuff like that. Well, if you need to learn how to get sounds, I will make another tutorial for setting it. But for now, why don't we set it to the example here? And see all these arguments? When you do emit sound, remember how I said if it has an argument, you have to put stuff in the parentheses? Well, look at all these arguments in there. If you just did self emit sound and called it a day, it's going to give you an error. It's like, well, what are you talking about? So, the first thing we're going to do is we have to give it a name. Well, in the wiki, it has a name right here. Let's just give it that name for now. It's going to sound like the AR2, which, again, I know it doesn't match the SMG, but just for now, we're going to give it that, just to give it a sound. We'll change it later, I promise. So, the first argument is sound, and every time you add an argument, and there's another one, put a comma Right here, put a comma between them to specify that you are done with argument number 1 and you are going to argument number 2. What's argument number 2? The sound level. How loud, not like how loud volume-wise, but how far away are you going to hear the sound? A good number to put is 120 for gunshots. There's actually a list of sounds, as you can see right here. Oh, sorry, it's actually 140 for gunshot. It's a list of how loud the sounds are. It's not like you have to set it to these. It's just like a reference. So you could set it to any number you want up to 180. Actually, it's up to 100 and 255, but I believe it starts to glitch out. Actually, it goes up to 511. Wow, you can make it really loud. Anyway, comma. Now the pitch. Like, do you want to be low pitched or high pitched? We're going to set it to a number. Now, take a look at this. The number goes from 0 to 255. 0 is, it's basically like the lowest, basiest thing ever. And 255, it sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks being thrown into a freaking meat grinder. Let's just set it to 100, which is normal. If you want to make it sound deeper, just set it to a number like 75 or whatever you want. But anything above 125 or below 75, it's going to start to sound distorted. So again, play with it. You don't have to follow everything exactly to a T whenever you have a choice like this. You can change it up after the tutorial or during it. Anyway, the volume. How loud do you want to be? Like actually loud. It goes from 0 to 1. 0 meaning it's quiet, 1 meaning it's at full volume. Let's set it to 1 so it sounds like a gunshot. It's not supposed to be quiet, it's a gun. The next thing, the channel. This is the sound channel, basically like what sound, there's multiple channels in the game, as you can see right here. There's multiple channels in the game for where the sounds come from. If too many sounds are on one channel, they will overlap each other or they will cancel each other out. So we can leave it as Chan_auto or Chan_weapon. If it doesn't work for you, try setting it to auto, or if you need to set a new channel entirely, you can do Chan_user_base plus a number. It can be any number you want from 100. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, let's just leave it as Chan_weapon for now. I believe that'll be all we need. So, Chan_weapon, and then that's all we need. You don't really need all this garbage. So don't worry about that. We're done. You don't have to put every single argument in. Only the ones that don't have a default state. These ones actually do have a default state, so you wouldn't get an error after you put this one in, but we want to control what it sounds like. So great. We have a bullet, we have an animation, we have a sound. What are we missing? Well, we're missing a delay. How fast do you want this thing to shoot? By default, if you don't put a delay, it's going to shoot as fast as the server can tick. Or it's going to be like a minigun. Well, maybe that's what you want. I don't want that though. So we're going to do a function called set next primary fire. That's basically how much time has to pass before we fire the weapon. So we're going to do self colon set next primary fire, and then inside the parentheses we have to put the time, the argument. So we're going to use a variable called cur time. Cur time is basically how long the server was up. How long has your game been running? This is the basis for timers in Garry's mod. This is how you keep time and how you time your weapons and all sorts of fancy stuff. So we're going to do cur time plus how long you want the delay to be. If you want to be 1 bullet every second, you do 1. The delay is in seconds. So we're going to set it to, how about 0.1? It's going to fire 10 bullets a second. I think that's fair. Or 1 bullet every 0.1 seconds. I think that's fair. And I believe that is all we need. Let's see. I believe that is all we need for now. So, we are done with primary attack. What's the next thing that we need? The next thing we're going to need is function, SWEP, secondary attack. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to make a secondary attack, and we're not. If you don't If you do not put this, what'll happen is when you right click with your weapon, it's going to, I think by default, let's check the wiki. By default, it's going to make it's going to make a shotgun. By default, that's what it does. It shoots like a shotgun. We don't really want that on this weapon. So if you make a function, leave it blank, it'll be like every time you press the secondary fire button, it's going to do nothing if you don't want to do anything. So, but if you wanted to make it do a secondary attack, it would do the same as primary attack or whatever you want to do. We'll cover that in another episode. We're going to make this weapon shoot a grenade or something like that. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to tell the weapon what to do when you reload. That's it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to make another function called function SWEP reload end to close the function. And we are going to do self default reload. And what that does is default reload forces the weapon to play its reload animation, and then it reloads the weapon. Simple as that. You can change the animation. Actually, wait, no. Hold on. No, default reload, you can leave it. No. Sorry, you have to do act_reload inside of that. I'm sorry. That'll force it to play the reload animation. If you don't, it won't have any animations to play. And you can set this to anything you want. You could set it to like fire again or make the fire animation again if you reload for some strange reason. I'm just letting you know that you can put any animation the weapon has inside of here. But for now, we want it to reload. So, we are all done. The weapon is done, I believe, and it is ready to be tested. So, what you want to do is Control S or File Save. And then, I'm an idiot. There are a couple of things that I've done wrong, and we're going to fix them right away. The cool thing about Garry's mod and modding it is that you can do all this in real time. Once the weapon is in the game and initialized, you can modify it and you don't have to restart the game or the server or anything like that to see the effects. So, let's fix it. The first thing I've done wrong is I did not declare that this is the primary clip size and the primary default clip. So let's add that in right now. Just do swep.primary.default clip and swep.primary.clip size and then swep.primary.automatic. What this will do is this will say only do this for the primary fire. And now the next thing we have to do is do swep.secondary.ammo equals none. Swep.secondary.automatic equals false. Even though we are not using secondary ammo, even though we are not using a secondary function, we have to tell it that there is absolutely nothing we want to do with secondary fire. If you don't do this, it'll give you pistol ammo as well as whatever ammo you tell it to by default, because by default, the secondary ammo of every weapon you make with the default base is the pistol ammo. There's one more thing I forgot to do. Excuse me for that. We never told it to take your ammo away when you fire it. So right now, if you fired the weapon, your ammo would never go down. We need to fix that. It's very simple. All we have to do is do SWEP take primary ammo. Or self take primary ammo and then set it to a number, 1. We're only firing one bullet at a time, so it would only make sense that we take one bullet at a time. So, I believe now this is everything that we need without me screwing up and bumbling. Let's check the weapon out now. I'm in the game, and let's check, look at that. Asper's weapons, Asper's new weapon, let's pick it up. We got our magazine for it, and here we go. Let's try it out. It makes the firing sound, it fires the weapon, it does the animation for recoiling, and it takes our ammo away. And just to check if it gives us the proper ammo, spawn it by pressing the use key on it, I believe, or the middle mouse button to spawn an additional weapon. And look at that. When we pick it up, it makes a reload. And I screwed up the reload, didn't I? Sorry about that. When you go to default reload, it has to be act_VM_reload. Sorry about that. And there we go. We have a functioning weapon. There's one more thing that we have to do, it looks like, though. I mean, you don't have to. The weapon works fine right now, but as you can see, or hear, or no, as what you can't hear is the reload sound. It doesn't make the reload sound that the SMG makes. We will fix that in the next tutorial. We will get the sound locked down, and we will get the reload sound locked down, and we will get some more things locked down about the weapon. But for now, this is what we have, and this is what we'll stick with. See you next time.